The rise of Silicon Valley. From orchards to innovation. California's Santa Clara Valley, located at the southern end of San Francisco Bay, was once a quiet, alluvial plain known for its sprawling orchards and thriving canning industry. Before the 1960s, this fertile land produced prunes, apricots, and cherries, earning global recognition for its agricultural output. But today, it is famously known as Silicon Valley, the world's most influential hub of technological innovation. Although the term Silicon Valley only entered global consciousness in recent decades, the origins of its electronics industry date back over a century. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of sustained effort, visionary leadership, and strategic investment in research and education. One figure stands out in this early evolution: Frederick Terman, a pioneering electrical engineering professor at Stanford University. Terman's long-term vision and dedication were instrumental in shaping Silicon Valley's identity. By fostering close collaboration between academia and industry, he laid the foundation for what would become the epicenter of American high technology. His work helped nurture a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in the heart of the valley. In the late 19th century, California was still considered peripheral to the industrial core of the United States. It lacked access to essential manufacturing resources like coal, which hindered early development. However, the state had one unique advantage: expertise in hydraulic engineering, gained through decades of gold mining. By the 1890s, entrepreneurs began exploring how to harness water power to generate electricity for California's growing cities. This vision led to the construction of hydroelectric power plants in the Sierra Nevada. These efforts used innovations like the Pelton water wheel, originally developed in San Francisco, and generators sourced from the east. To deliver electricity over long distances, engineers developed high-tension transmission lines, pushing the boundaries of electrical infrastructure. Crucially, this period saw the birth of a collaborative model for innovation. University professors and industry engineers worked side by side, exchanging designs, testing equipment, and advancing theory with real-world application. One industry leader praised this dynamic for demystifying electrical theory, replacing an interminable labyrinth of mathematics with clear and practical results. A defining moment came in 1898 when Stanford professor Frederick A.C. Perrine, his students, and industry engineers jointly tested a revolutionary high-potential oil switch, enabling the construction of 40,000-volt transmission lines. Perrine would later take a leave from Stanford to consult for the Standard Electric Company of California, where he helped pioneer the use of aluminum wire in the state's grid. Stanford University itself, founded in 1885 by railroad magnate Leland Stanford as a tribute to his late son, quickly emerged as a key player in California's technological rise. By 1900, Stanford's electrical engineering program had become essential to the state's growing energy sector. Its graduates fueled the expansion of power companies, while its professors advanced research critical to the industry's growth. In 1905, the arrival of Harris Ryan, an expert in high-voltage transmission from Cornell, further elevated Stanford's role. He championed the university-industry partnership model, establishing the West's first high-voltage lab in 1913 and later, in 1926, America's first university laboratory capable of generating 2 million volts. The rise of Silicon Valley, wireless innovation, and the rise of Frederick Terman. As San Francisco's port grew in global importance during the early 20th century, local shipping and communication interests began exploring a revolutionary new technology: wireless communication. Inspired by developments in Europe led by Guglielmo Marconi, early wireless systems began to take root along the California coast soon after 1900. According to historian Arthur Norberg, this new medium was ripe for innovation and excellent for exploitation with minimal capital. The only major hurdle was Marconi's strong patent protections, which limited amateur experimentation and entrepreneurial expansion. In 1909, that obstacle was overcome by Cyril F. Elwell, a recent graduate of Stanford's electrical engineering program. Elwell secured the rights to a series of wireless patents developed by Danish physicist Valdemar Poulsen and demonstrated the system in Palo Alto, just steps away from Stanford University. With early financial backing from Stanford President David Starr Jordan and several influential professors, Elwell launched a company to commercialize the technology. By 1911, his enterprise had expanded into manufacturing under the name Federal Telegraph Company, with a dedicated laboratory in Palo Alto. This created one of the earliest industrial research hubs in what would eventually become Silicon Valley, offering a rare and invaluable opportunity for young engineers graduating from nearby universities. Around this time, in 1910, a young Frederick Terman arrived in California. Just 10 years old, Terman was the son of Lewis M. Terman, a prominent psychologist who had joined the Stanford faculty from Indiana. The elder Terman would go on to develop the Stanford Binet Intelligence Test, a foundational tool in psychological measurement. Frederick, meanwhile, immersed himself in the vibrant scientific atmosphere of Stanford and the surrounding region. He fished in local lakes, roamed the campus hills, and, most importantly, became captivated by the promise of radio technology. By the age of 16, he had already built a working transmitter with his friend Herbert Hoover Jr. Terman graduated from Stanford in 1920 with a degree in chemical engineering but quickly transitioned to electrical engineering, joining the Federal Telegraph Laboratory before returning to Stanford for further study under Harris Ryan. After earning his electrical engineering degree in 1922, he pursued a doctorate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Although Terman had plans to begin his career in the East, those aspirations were interrupted when he contracted tuberculosis. In 1925, Ryan offered the recovering Terman a half-time teaching position and access to a small radio communications lab he had recently opened in the attic of Stanford's engineering building. Terman accepted and immediately began reshaping the curriculum. He broadened traditional courses in high-voltage transmission to include an expansive theory of long-distance electrical systems, incorporating everything from telephone lines and antennas to radio frequency filters. Terman recognized that Stanford lagged behind its peers in advanced electrical engineering and research output. In 1927, he authored an article in Science arguing that more innovative research was occurring in corporate laboratories than at universities. He personally delivered a copy of the article to Ryan, accompanied by a bold proposal. Stanford, given its history and resources, was ideally positioned to become the national center for electrical engineering research. Ryan was convinced. Terman soon secured additional funding, recruited top-tier students, and launched advanced research initiatives in vacuum tube design and radio wave propagation. His laboratory quickly became a magnet for what he called electronic nuts, young engineers obsessed with circuitry, transistors, and the future of computing. In his first 6 years, Terman oversaw 33 graduate theses, half the department's total. When Ryan retired in 1932, Terman naturally emerged as the department's leader. Author Michael Malone, in his History of Silicon Valley, described Terman as studious, soft-spoken, and forever self-effacing. Yet behind that modest demeanor was both a brilliant educator and a profound visionary, one whose influence would eventually turn the Santa Clara Valley into the global epicenter of technological innovation. The rise of Silicon Valley. How Stanford and Terman sparked a tech revolution. One of the key reasons students were drawn to Frederick Terman at Stanford was his unwavering interest in the local electronics industry. He believed in giving his students more than just academic training. "I would take the boys out to see what the world off campus was like," Terman recalled, "and sometimes have people from these companies come in to give talks to the students." That real-world exposure became critical after 1932, when the Federal Telegraph Company, once the primary local employer for Stanford engineering graduates, relocated to the East Coast. Its absence created a vacuum, a semi-desert, as Terman described it. But small firms like Heinz and Kaufman, Itel McCullough in San Francisco, and Litton Engineering Laboratories in Redwood City remained. Significantly, Ralph Heinz and Charles Litton were Stanford alumni. Terman understood that fostering innovation required collaboration beyond engineering. In 1929, he wrote in his annual lab report that cooperation with Stanford's chemistry, physics, and mathematics departments would be very desirable and perhaps necessary. This cross-disciplinary vision began to materialize thanks to William W. Hansen, a Stanford physics graduate who joined the faculty in 1934. Hansen aimed to use electrons to probe atomic nuclei but lacked funding. Instead, he invented the cavity resonator, a high-frequency radio device he named the Rhumbotron. At the same time, Sigurd and Russell Varian, brothers with a background in aviation and electronics, were developing a new aircraft navigation and detection system in Halcyon, California. Russell, who had been Hansen's college roommate, recognized that the Rhumbotron could be a breakthrough for their project. This connection brought the Varian brothers to Stanford, where they became unpaid research associates in exchange for laboratory space and minimal funding. In a matter of months, they developed a revolutionary new device, the klystron tube, a powerful tool for radar and microwave communication. With support from the Sperry Gyroscope Company in New York, Stanford launched a major research initiative in microwave technology that would lay a cornerstone of Silicon Valley's future. In 1937, Terman became head of Stanford's electrical engineering department. That same year, he encouraged two former students, William Hewlett and David Packard, to commercialize an audio oscillator Hewlett had developed. Terman helped reunite the pair. Hewlett had gone to MIT, and Packard had taken a job at General Electric and secured a graduate fellowship for Packard to return to Palo Alto. Their first product, a distortion analyzer, was assembled in a garage behind Packard's home, a now legendary origin story. Terman kept tabs on their progress. If the car was in the garage, there was no backlog. But if the car was parked in the driveway, business was good. By 1940, Hewlett-Packard had 9 employees. During World War II, the company expanded dramatically. Terman also funneled students into Hansen's klystron research, just as it was gaining traction for wartime applications. Stanford received $10,000 from Sperry to support the project. Before relocating to Sperry's Long Island facility in late 1940, Hansen taught a specialized course on the klystron for Terman's graduate students, preparing them for critical wartime roles. Historians Stuart Leslie and Bruce Hevely later noted that this partnership trained a new generation of microwave engineers and transformed Stanford's electrical engineering program into a leading center of innovation. In 1942, Terman himself was called to service. Vannevar Bush, head of the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development, appointed him to lead the Radio Research Laboratory at Harvard, a top-secret wartime initiative. Terman oversaw over 800 scientists developing radar jamming technologies and tunable receivers. His wartime connections proved invaluable. A casual conversation with Harvard's treasurer, whose institution had received millions in defense contracts thanks to Terman's work, confirmed his growing belief. Post-war America would usher in a new era of federal support for science and technology. As Terman later put it, "The war made it obvious to me that science and technology are more important to national defense than masses of men." He foresaw a future in which engineering research and graduate education would be significantly backed by public investment. This era, he said, would be defined by sponsored research. When Terman returned to Stanford in 1946 as Dean of Engineering, he set out to turn the university into a national leader in electronics research. Stanford already had a reputation in high-voltage power transmission, but Terman believed the future lay elsewhere. The newer opportunities, he said, were in electronics and things related to electronics. He launched a focused strategy: recruit top faculty, fund the most promising research, and attract elite graduate students. Most importantly, he cultivated deep, enduring partnerships with private industry. Terman described his approach as steeple building. Just as a church steeple symbolizes the spiritual center of a town, his goal was to make Stanford's electronics labs the intellectual and economic heart of a thriving technology ecosystem. Early success came quickly. Within his first months back, representatives from the newly formed Office of Naval Research, ONR, visited Terman's lab with funding in hand. He proposed 3 research projects, one each in chemistry, physics, and electrical engineering. The chemistry initiative faltered, but the physics project led to a Nobel Prize for Dr. Felix Bloch, and the electrical engineering work blossomed into a nationally recognized program. These efforts gave rise to Stanford's Electronics Research Laboratories and eventually the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, SLAC, both funded by federal agencies. This blend of visionary leadership, interdisciplinary collaboration, university-industry synergy, and strategic government funding created a powerful engine for innovation, one that would transform Santa Clara Valley into the global nerve center of technology. The rise of Silicon Valley, the industrial boom and birth of a high-tech ecosystem. The post-war years marked a pivotal shift for Stanford University's role in shaping the technological future of the Santa Clara Valley. At the heart of this evolution was Stanford's Electronics Research Laboratory, ERO, which conducted cutting-edge studies in electronics and microwave physics. While ERL researchers were initially cautious about becoming too involved in commercial or military ventures, they continued to follow Frederick Terman's vision, establishing collaborative ties beyond the university's walls. After World War II, entrepreneurs like Russell and Sigurd Varian established their own companies near Stanford, joining Hewlett-Packard, Litton Engineering, and other pioneering electronics firms. ERL researchers often partnered with these companies, both formally and informally, to convert theoretical breakthroughs into practical technologies. As a result, the number of innovations originating from Stanford increased, elevating the university's importance in both military and commercial electronics. The Klystron tube, originally developed on campus, found wide application in radar systems, atomic research, and Stanford's own linear accelerator, SLAC. Other breakthroughs followed, including microwave tube development and the invention of the F6 fluxmeter, a device that offered unprecedented precision in magnetic field measurements. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the Office of Naval Research immediately turned to Terman with a proposal for applied electronics research. Stanford approved the project in just 2 weeks. The result was a $450,000 annual research contract, a milestone that solidified Stanford's leadership in applied electronics. With this funding, Terman became director of the newly established Applied Electronics Laboratory, EL. Housed in a purpose-built facility funded by both the Navy and Hewlett-Packard, the lab accepted only those projects that advanced Stanford's fundamental research and bolstered its scientific prestige. Just as importantly, EL also aimed to produce prototype devices for transfer to private industry, creating a seamless link between academic research and commercial innovation. This model of a community of interest between university and industry gained urgency in the early 1950s due to Stanford's financial constraints. Bound by its founding charter, the university couldn't sell its 8,100 acres of land, and its endowment couldn't cover rising operating costs. In 1951, a faculty committee began exploring ways to monetize university land, considering agriculture, housing, and even a shopping center. But a key breakthrough came when Varian Associates, having outgrown their San Carlos facility, requested to lease university land for a new R&D campus. The idea made perfect sense. Varian was developing technologies based on Stanford patents, employed university faculty and graduates, and had deep institutional ties. Encouraged by Terman, Stanford agreed to lease land to Varian, setting a precedent for others. However, a subsequent lease to Eastman Kodak, which had little connection to the university's research mission, prompted Terman to push for a more focused strategy. By 1953, Terman had joined the Advisory Committee on Land and Development, where he successfully persuaded university business manager Alf Brandon to restrict leases to high-technology companies. Terman reinforced his argument by citing the substantial donations from Hewlett-Packard and Varian, the corporate matching funds for engineering tuition, and his long-standing steeples of excellence concept. Soon after, companies with no technological affiliation found it nearly impossible to secure a lease in what was becoming the Stanford Industrial Park. In 1955, Terman was appointed Stanford's provost, and he immediately applied his steeple-building philosophy to other disciplines. He prioritized chemistry and life sciences, laying the groundwork for a community of interest in biotechnology, a field that would eventually mirror Silicon Valley's success in electronics. The impact of Terman's vision was undeniable. By 1967, Stanford was receiving $12 million annually in government and corporate-sponsored research, with corporate gifts exceeding $2 million per year. Hewlett-Packard became the flagship tenant of the Stanford Industrial Park in 1956. Soon after, Ampex and Lockheed's Space and Missile Division followed. By 1960, more than 40 technology firms occupied the 450-acre park, creating a tight-knit, innovation-focused community on Stanford's doorstep. The transformation of Santa Clara Valley was complete. Once known as the Valley of Heart's Delight, for its orchards and farmlands, the region had evolved into a booming center for electronics and aerospace industries. The opening of NASA's Ames Research Center in Sunnyvale in 1940 brought even more defense contracts and research opportunities. Meanwhile, local governments and chambers of commerce, especially in San Jose, launched aggressive campaigns to attract even more high-tech companies. By the 1960s, the valley was brimming with national corporations, research laboratories, and entrepreneurial startups, all driven by the interconnected ecosystem pioneered by Terman, Stanford, and the first wave of electronics innovators. As historian Michael Malone notes, any electrical engineer with ambition ran his resume around the Valley Circuit in hope of a response. What began with a single professor's vision for academic excellence and industry collaboration had, within a few decades, become Silicon Valley, the most dynamic center of technological innovation the world had ever seen.